Order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. Starting off with citizen concern, round one.
Melissa Thomas, Human Resources Director. I just would like to inform the board that we have received 3 bids for the collective bargaining attorney fees. And I am going to be calling the committee early next week to open those and to discuss the proposals.
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, anything that's not on the agenda that they'd like to bring up? Item 2, approval of the agenda. I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to the consent agenda. Items 3 through 9 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the July 5th, 2022 meeting. Item 4 is approval of claims. We have one that we wanted to pull out. Was the 7, do you have the amount there,
As
Dan?
attorney's fees,
Yeah.
Phillips, yes. You need to look at it, that's all I'm saying.
Like to, I mean, we didn't authorize that, so we shouldn't approve that, in my opinion.
That's up to you guys.
So let's clarify that. I have claims here for the last 2 years from Phillips, the law firm. You approved a claim on, let's see, we'll start here. Chad, can you come forward? Sure. How often have you asked for authorization for to seek a legal opinion from outside?
Never.
And why is that?
I was told when I took over as sheriff that the law firm that Doug Phillips was in was the attorney that handled claims for the county, and that each sheriff preceding me had the authority to contact Doug to seek legal advice in matters that were related to the sheriff's office. So I know when Dennis said that there was some question from the board about whether or not that was authorized or not, I had spoken to Sheriff Drew, spoken to Sheriff Parrott, and spoke to Doug Phillips, and Doug Phillips said that it had been the practice of the county for at least, I think he said 25, 30 years, that his office was contacted routinely by the sheriff. I was told that they're contacted routinely by HR in reference to human resources issues that come up. And so that's what I was operating under.
So Dennis, why is this an issue now?
Because the Supreme Court has ruled that the board has to approve all attorney fees outside counsel, and that's why it's brought up.
And how many times have you brought it up? Since I've been in office, how many times have you
I
brought
don't
it
think
up?
I've ever brought it up, Pat.
Right,
But it's come back to the board. at different-
that's correct. So the past precedent, it's been established pretty
Okay, but Supreme Court
obvious.
rules everything.
Yeah, but pretty obvious is that past precedent.
Well, that's
Is
up to the
that
board.
all the, yep, it is up to the
It is
board.
up to the board.
It is up to the board.
Absolutely.
Okay. So in the past 2 years, January 14th of 2020, did you ask for permission to?
I don't believe I would have been there. I was there, I took office January 2nd of 2021.
Okay. So 2021,
Yes, sir.
okay.
I mean, I can answer the question. I've never gotten approval
Right.
for any consultation with Mr. Phillips as it relates to all kinds of different claims or different items that he has represented the county on and sought legal advice on. Some of them have been HR matters, firing, disciplining. Believe, you know, on a couple of the issues, there was questions even speaking with HR, and either I or Melissa or together we had contacted the Doug Phillips's office for guidance.
So in this matter, though, it's a little different, because when we use HR to come up with, you know, issues that's under the purview of the board, in this condition, it seemed more like you were getting an opinion for yourself as a sheriff, something that wasn't privy to the board. It seems more like an outside legal claim
Well-
that would fall under something that would require our approval.
Sure.
So personally,
good-
I'm going to move to remove.
Can I
that-
respond?
Yes, you can afterwards.
Okay.
But right now, I'm going to move to remove that claim, or deny that claim. What was the dollar amount, Dennis?
We can't deny the whole thing. It's $752.50 and the HR was $122.50.
So 722.50?
No, I don't think the amounts,
$752.50. $752.50.
752.50. That is just the claim here.
Okay. For clarification, the,
point of order, Mr., and not to
Oh, yeah,
interrupt you,
yeah, go
just,
ahead.
is there a motion on the floor?
That's my motion.
Okay. And is there a second, or are we just moving back in debate?
I don't have a second.
Do I have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
All right, motion by Raddick, second by Taylor.
who, you said the board asked you to look into it. Who from the board asked you to look into it?
To watch claims or to look at it,
Yep.
Jeremy.
Okay,
And me.
okay. No, but who asked you to look into it?
Both of you, I believe.
Okay, well, that wasn't your answer, just a second ago. Just so that we're clear, the information that I received from Doug Phillips ended up being supported by Patrick Jennings. And the information that Doug Phillips supplied actually made a correction to the previous information that I questioned. And the correction is what, when Doug Phillips gave me the new information, or gave me that opinion, then when PJ did a further, deeper look at the issue, went against the original opinion. So you're going to, basically what you're attempting to do is penalize me for getting legal advice that ended up being the correct information and was supported by the county attorney. Just so we're clear that everybody understands what.
Well, then that's a twist on words, because you can't define whether or not that is correct information until you have a court or somebody decide in Iowa code as to what was correct. Because attorney opinions are not the same as the law.
I agree. But what I'm saying is that without Doug Phillips's outside of opinion, we all would have just worked off of Joshua's memo from March 28th. And after Doug Phillips's opinion that I sought, and then contacting Patrick Jennings and asking the county attorney to do a deeper dive and a more thorough look at the information, he came up with an opinion that was different than Joshua's, and his is the official opinion of the county attorney's office. So I understand that there's still debate on what the court will rule. I understand that. I'm just saying that I think we all want to make the best to make the most informed decision that we can. And in this particular case, it was thanks to Doug Phillips that we were able to make a more informed decision on the one particular matter. Now, the goalpost was moved during the middle of the playing when it was decided that the real issue wasn't whether the authority lied with the sheriff or not, but the issue was whether or not the board had the authority, or that, I'm sorry, the auditor had the authority to process the claim without your approval. So, I mean, I just go back to, I understand what's going on here, but if it weren't for Doug Phillips's review of the information and giving me guidance, I probably wouldn't have asked PJ for a deeper review and wouldn't have come with a different clarification. So it seems quite unfair to operate in this manner. You know, it just doesn't seem that it's certainly fair in any way, shape, or form.
I have a question. So I understand that Doug Phillips's review may have spurred county attorney action, but I guess my question is why wasn't an opinion asked, or why this deeper dive wasn't asked for specifically from the county attorney's office, the county attorney, rather than going first outside?
Well, because I didn't know at the time that Joshua hadn't sought or cleared anything with Patrick Jennings, right? So I questioned some of the stuff in the email chain with Joshua, as far as even some of the verbiage in the memo. You say approval of the board, and my question was, do you mean, or no, wasn't approval. That was my question. My question was, do you mean approval of the board, or do you mean that they determine? I think that's what it was. He said something about determining. So there were some things in there that I questioned whether or not it was accurate. And I had reached out to Auditor Gill, and he brought up the longevity and some other issues, and that's when I sought the outside legal counsel.
Yeah, I just don't remember. The reason I'm asking is because in HR matters, I recall, you know, there's either a standing deferral or she'll ask county attorney's office and he'll refer to another outside law firm. And I don't recall that being a part of this discussion where anyone was saying, I asked PJ and he recused himself, you know, so that's why I went elsewhere.
Yeah, I guess I'm not tracking your line of,
I think it's that there's a very specific process, and ISAC lays this out, that an elected official goes to the county attorney. The county attorney either renders an opinion or says, I'm recusing myself because there's a conflict of interest. You should seek outside legal counsel. The elected official comes before the board for approval. If it's denied, then that elected official goes out on his own or her own liability with seeking that. That's pretty clear.
sure.
So I guess that's the question, if I'm following your line of thinking.
Well, I mean, my question was, why wasn't the county attorney sought for that deeper dive if there was a disagreement? I understand you're unsure that he spoke for the office, but that could have been a question. Like, PJ, I need your signature on
So
something
I guess Mike,
before I go.
Yeah, so I haven't seen the claim. I don't know how much of the claim was from the 15-minute phone call that I made to Doug Phillips on the initial date, or how much of the claim was him drafting the memo that Joshua requested during the board meeting. So we could maybe look at it deeper, because he did in the board meeting ask for a written memo from Doug Phillips.
If I can clarify, and I know he's not here, but his understanding was the memo had been written. He was asking for a copy of it from
He
you.
asked me if I had
He's-
anything in writing,
You
and I
said
told
you had
him,
an email or a memo, and he asked to receive it as well.
go back and review the video.
We
He
can,
asked if I had
but-
it in writing. I said, I do not. I said, are you questioning whether or not that's what he told me? And he said, no, I am not questioning it, but I would like to see where Doug drew his thing from. And I said, okay, I can ask Doug tomorrow to give you a written memo. Go back and review the tape.
That is what occurred.
still has not been pre-authorized by the board, which an elected official.
That's correct,
is
and you have
required
the
to do.
prerogative to do exactly what you're going to do. But the precedent has been, and the understanding of every sheriff that I've been here, is that they haven't had to seek. And no board has ever directed the sheriff to say that he has to seek permission to go to outside legal counsel. Not in the 25 years that I've been here. They have been able to do that. You're absolutely right, but the precedent has been that the sheriff, any sitting sheriff, has been able to do that without coming to the board and ask for permission. Dennis has verified that. That's my recollection too. If you want to deny the claim, you certainly have the ability to do that.
And I do remember a time where the sheriff did come to the board and ask for outside legal counsel, but
And I think other elected officials have
done
as
that,
well.
so-
And that's a precedent that's been set, and both in the affirmative and denial. And so to say that this is the first time, I do not believe is accurate.
Would you agree that, that after Doug Phillips's memo and that PJ did reverse the memo from March 28th?
again, those are legal opinions and not law.
I didn't ask you for, I'm just saying, would you agree that after Doug Phillips's
Well, then why would we
memo-
pay Doug Phillips to do what PJ would have done for free? That's the point.
Because without that opinion, I'm not certain that there would have been any deeper dive done by the county attorney's office.
But
It
that is the
forced
role.
them to do a deeper dive because they had an outside legal opinion. And to avoid any type of litigation, the deeper dive was done by PJ and whoever within his staff. And that's what that memo that was given to the board that day.
I guess if there's
I mean,
no new
and
information. we
You're
haven't reviewed-
penalizing, you're going to penalize me for giving you the most current, up-to-date information from the county attorney's office.
Anything new to be heard from anybody?
I can't remember a time when our county attorney has, other than this, he's always deferred and deflected to outside counsel. I can't remember a time where he hasn't deflected. Can you?
Well, I think
We've
in this
approached him with
instance,
several
he didn't-
things, and he'll say, well, I recommend you get outside counsel. And I could probably go back through the record, and that seems to be a common boilerplate answer from third floor.
I agree, except in this case, he did end up answering the question and giving the opinion. And I don't know that he had an opportunity to say, I'm recusing myself, I have a conflict of interest.
Well, it still sounds contradictory with past practice, and now we're potentially going to refuse it.
Have you ever refused an elected official outside legal counsel, Mr. DeWitt?
Couldn't tell you. Don't recall. Do
I
you?
believe, did you agree, Auditor Gill, you asked for outside legal counsel in a matter concerning the board, is that correct?
Yes.
Was that approved by this board?
I don't even recall what the issue was, but I do recall coming to the board and asking for,
Okay, and why did you ask for permission from the board beforehand?
because I never had the agreement, the unwritten agreement that the sheriff had with the Board of Supervisors. I never had that.
That's what I think one of the problems is an unwritten agreement based on some sort of precedence that is
Well, the
I
board-
agree.
new.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm telling you what, I told you what the history
Yeah.
was.
You
You can do whatever you want.
And if I may, I think the difference is in the world that I live in, and the decisions that we make, sometimes in near real time need opinions, so that we don't end up, unknowingly or mistakenly costing the county hundreds of thousands of dollars later. And so, that's why when we need a question answered, we make a phone call. My guess is the $752.50 claim wouldn't have been anywhere near that if it would have only been the phone call that I made that afternoon to Doug. Now, I haven't seen the claim, so I don't know, and maybe they can itemize the bill even greater for you. But it's, you know, it's a little tough standing here and being held to a different standard than what's been for the last 20 years. But that's, I mean, I get it. The public will see through this all eventually. There's no doubt about it.
But there's also,
So do what you're going to do.
but there's also the broader issue. I can't separate my vote on this decision from the decision that I've made on whether supplemental pay is appropriate for the deputies at this time. So I see this as another kind of arm of a broader issue, and I don't think for intellectual consistency, I can support you seeking outside counsel, because I don't understand why PJ wasn't consulted before you called Doug. I think if you would have reversed that order, then
Well, you explained that, didn't you? Never mind.
I think
But-
I've said everything
but,
that needs to be said.
again-
The three of you or whoever are gonna vote how you're gonna vote, I get it. I think most people privy to what goes on they get it. People get it. It's become clear.
I hope people understand that we're trying to work out whether or not the supervisors ultimately control the purse strings for a county when it comes to a decision of substantial spending. And it's a decision that it's going to impact Woodbury County, but it's going to impact other counties in Iowa too. It's a big deal. This isn't just,
Okay, so just for clarification, then, regardless of what you do here, just for clarification, anytime that I need to speak to Doug Phillips in reference to any legal claim or case that's happened as it relates to the sheriff's office, I need to come and seek your approval first before I make that phone call.
I believe that this is an issue that doesn't need to be, I don't think this needs to be a Board of Supervisors of Woodbury County versus the Sheriff of Woodbury County issue.
I agree.
I'm
I'm not sure why you're making it that way.
because it's a pretty,
Okay, so
Pretty
then
big-
answer my
because-
question. For clarification, I need to know how you want me to proceed moving forward. If there's a death in the jail, if there's something, one of our deputies is involved in some life and death deadly situation or whatever it might be again tomorrow, and it's 2:00 in the morning, how do I get your approval to call and get a legal opinion if it's not the county attorney's? Do you want me to seek the board's approval every single time from this point moving forward? That's all I need to know, and then
I
we'll
think
do it that
the
way.
answer is yes.
Okay.
What claim is it that you're denying?
Do you have that information, Dennis?
It's just the one that fills. I don't have a claim number, no. It's a total claim is $875. $122.50 is for Human Resources, and $752.50 is to Doug Phillips.
So 752.50 is the amount in question.
You're going to deny the claim or not? We're not going to go through and pick out the
I do
items.
have one other question. On the $122 or whatever, did you get prior board approval? You did?
She works
When
for
was
us.
that? Okay. And
She discusses with the chair on a regular basis things she needs legal counsel for.
so you can speak for the whole board?
Yeah, as the chairman of
Typically,
the
as
board.
the
he
chair,
does-
you're put
You get
in
to
that
approve
role.
the claim ahead of time? So in the future, then
And
I don't
HR
need-
matters for the
Okay,
chair is
So that
the
clarifies something
presiding.
and makes it easier for me. I don't need to get board approval. I just have to call you at 2:00 in the morning and tell you that I need to talk to an attorney.
Well, if it's
And
for
you
an
can-
emergency,
you can
if it is
clarify
for
it?
an emergency situation, the chair could do that, but
Okay,
if
well,
it's
then that-
something like legitimately very expensive, very, I would say controversial, or something that definitely involves the board, it's going to be a board decision that you're going to have to bring it back for.
Wonder if he has 5 emergencies in one night. You want 5 separate calls? I think there's gotta be some give and take here a little bit.
On the wild hypotheticals, the last time that we had 5 emergencies that constituted outside legal counsel in the middle of the night, it haven't happened.
But what if he can't get a hold of Keith?
Then he calls the vice chair, and then we go from there. The last time that we've had this situation, I haven't been on the board, and I've been here longer than anybody except for Matthew Long, 3 months before.
I listen to Barry Manilow records until like 4 a.m. every night, so I'll be free.
All right, well, no
Bring
other,
some levity into the discussion.
no other information here. All those in favor of denying the claim, say aye.
Which
Aye.
claim is it?
75250,
That is not the claim.
it's a
It's a
partial,
claim from a class law firm?
correct.
Okay, that's the one you're denying?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1. Moving on, item 5 from Board Administration, approval of resolution authorizing the execution of memorandum of agreement with Siouxland Regional Transit System and fixing of date of August 2nd, 4:40 PM for a hearing on the proposed issuance of revenue bonds or notes pursuant to Chapter 419 of the Iowa Code. From item 6, Veterans Affairs. A is receive Commission of Veterans Affairs second quarterly report, and B, receive Commission of Veterans Affairs third quarterly report. Item 7 from Human Resources, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions. Item 8 from Board Administration, approval of notice property sale for parcel known as 1020 South Glass Street for Tuesday, July 26th at 4:35 PM. Item 9 from Community and Economic Development, authorize chairman and auditors sign release of mortgage for county loan cyclone operations for the Sergeant Bluff Eye Care.
I move the consent agenda.
That ends the consent agenda. Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to our 4:35 set time, a little late. Public hearing and sale of property known as 715 and a half Cunningham Drive. We're now in a public hearing. Anybody heard for or against the sale? So if you're going to make a bid, just a second. All right, no one to be heard. I'll move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Now come on up and make a bid here, sir.
I'm Steve Nelson, 2805 West 4th Sioux City, and I'd like to make an offer or bid on that for $892 for that parcel.
All righty, any other bids? Scott, you look like you like it. No? Oh, okay. I'll move seeing no other bids, I'll move to sell to Mr. Nelson for the $892.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to item 11 from Williams & Company, discuss and receive the Woodbury County Certified Annual Financial Report for FY 2021. Hello, Chad.
So we'll just kind of go through the audit report like we've kind of done in the past. For the most part, things were pretty much the same. There was a new standard that was implemented, but we'll get to that. But this is a annual comprehensive financial report. They changed the name of it. They just flip-flop annual and comprehensive because Kafir was a racial slur in South Africa, so they changed the name to ACFR now so going forward, it's an annual comprehensive financial statement. No different though. Page 1 is a letter of transmittal, just basically where management can go through and kind of say what's going on within the county, all the different high points and everything. Page 7 is a certificate of achievement in excellence in financial reporting. So received this from the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association. If I remember right, I think they only had 3 different comments, and they were 2 or 3, and they were very, very minor comments. So according to them, the report looked very well. Kind of skipping a few pages. Page 12 is our auditor's opinion. And if you were to skip over to page 13, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. So that's the unmodified or the clean opinion that the county always seeks. And so it is the clean opinion. Page 15 is the start of the management discussion analysis. Just a lot of comparative information between the current year and the prior year. So you can kind of just read through that if you want to. Like I said, just kind of explains why things increased or decreased from one year over the next. Page 23 is the statement of net position. It's the full accrual basis of accounting, 10,000 foot level. Really can't make any management decisions at this level. Page 24 and 25 is the statement of activities or the income statement on the full accrual basis. Again, can't really make much decisions there. Start on page 26 is the fund level statements. One thing to point out is that something new this year was the inclusion of the Woodbury County Law Enforcement Center Authority. Since this was so close, it's, separate legal entity, but is so closely related to the county that it is considered a blended component unit. So it's the same thing how the drainage districts that are under the county's control, those are considered a blended component unit. Same thing for the law enforcement authority, is that it's a blended component unit, so it's so closely related, it's essentially included with the county. Going on to page 29 is the income statement for the fund level. One thing that we always take a look at is the unassigned fund balance in the general fund and how that relates to the expenditures. And so there was 76 days of unassigned fund balance in the general fund. So that means that you could have operated for 76 days without any other additional resources and would have been able to operate. That's an increase from 62 days in 2020 and 57 days in 2019. So everything's going in the right direction there. Page 32 is just the balance sheet of the internal service fund, which is a health insurance fund. You got the income statement, cash flows. Then page 35, this page was included last year, but page 36, there was a new standard that was implemented, which is GASB Statement 84. It changed the definition and the reporting requirements for the trust and agency funds. Now it looks more like a normal income statement. Before, in prior years, it showed cash balance, then any increase, decrease, and then to an ending cash balance. Now it looks more like a true income statement. And this is the grouping schedule. The individual funds are further in the back. Page 37 is the start of the notes. There's just a lot of detail there. You can kind of go through that if you want, but skip over that. Starting on page 60 is the start to the RSI, the required supplementary information. There's a few different schedules relating to the budget, and then the IPERS and OPEB, public employee benefits, or post-employment benefits, excuse me. Page 67 is non-major, so all the smaller funds, those financial statements. So you got the balance sheet, and then on page 73 is the income statement. Then start on page 79, this is where all the individual trust and agency funds are. You guys have kind of a lot of them. I think there's 27 different funds there, so that was, it took some time to get those formatted that way, and then actually we kind of had to take a look at each fund and see if it still met the definition of the new standard. Then page 91 is the more detailed financial statements for the component unit, which is Siouxland District Health. Starting on page 95 is the stat section, so this is required to be part of the ACFR to be submitted to the GFOA for the certificate in reporting. So there's a lot of good information here. It's 10 years worth. It kind of sets the, you can see trends, everything. So there's a lot of good information for you to go through. Starting on page 121 is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And I think this was the largest dollar amount since I've been with the company on your guys' audit. Reported page 123, about $5.6 million in federal awards. I'm sure that's only going to get larger with ARPA and infrastructure bills and everything. We did test two major programs. One was coronavirus relief, and then another one was at Siouxland District Health, because we basically look at you guys together, that you're one and the same essentially. So a good chunk of this 5.6 is over at Siouxland District Health. Page 125 is just our report on internal controls. We don't actually test internal controls, but we just gain an understanding of the controls. And then page 127 is basically kind of the same thing, but more for the two major programs that we tested for the federal grants. Page 129 is just the schedule of findings and question costs. Same thing that we had last year, journal entry, finding, and then we did find one grant, and we kind of worked through that onto, improve procedures. Then that way, that would include all grants on the CFA.
So on page 131, it says the budget should have been amended in accordance with chapter 331.435. That says we will amend the budget when required in the future. Dennis, did we address that?
Hey, the problem we have there, we got 2 months of accruals, and it's very hard for any office to get exactly how much are. Some of the amounts were very little, but you can't help it when you're on an accrual basis. They can judge the payroll, things like that, but lower expenses are hard to do. You don't know what your gas is gonna be, you don't know what some of the fixed costs, you don't know they aren't really fixed, they vary.
Okay. So in that,
Yeah, and we've had that with other clients that, I don't want to say it's not a big deal, but yet, the state basically, they look at that, they see it, and they just kind of move on. I've never seen anybody from the state level question it or anything, but, and actually the one on 131 is related to joint disaster, because then we have to report on those individual departments as well. If you were to scroll, let's see here, what page was that? So on page 61, or 60 and 61, that's the budget to actual schedule. So it looks like the largest negative one was in capital projects. So I'm guessing just some projects then with the accruals came over than what was budgeted. So.
I'll go ahead and move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Chad.
Yep, thank you.
Item 12A, secondary roads, receive bids for pavement markings 2022 and return them to the county engineer for review and recommendation, unless a clear winner is decided today.
Colin Ryan here for Secondary Roads. These are bids for annual repainting. Every year we repaint roughly a third to a half of our roadway system, just kind of depending on how things have been damaged, how they've worn down. Obviously, when we have winters with more snow, things get bladed off a little bit more.
Also
first
have
bid.
Ds too.
What?
You also have Ds.
Should beat you to it. Our first bid here is from Highway Signing. Got the bid bond. For a total bid, $254,800. Our second bid here, I believe it's Iowa Plains, the sticker's right over their name. Let's check on the inside. Yep, Iowa Plains Signing, and their bid total was $239,640. Finally, we have Vogel Traffic Services. Really wanted their security. Come on, guys.
No money, no money.
There's another one inside of there.
And there's, let's check the bond, bonded as well. And their bid total is $138,560.
I'll move to receive the bids.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes 5-0. I think we
Does
award it.
appear We've got a pretty clear low bidder here. Won't take any review.
I'll move,
needed, so.
I'll move to award to Vogel Paint our traffic services.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Item 13 is report on committee meetings. Anybody on this end?
No landfill or 911 meeting tomorrow night.
All right.
Matthew, are you going to be at the IT meeting?
Yes, you?
Planning on it?
You say there's no landfill meeting tomorrow?
That's the emails I got.
The reason they're having the E911 canceled theirs till September, so I think they're moving theirs up till September because there's no issues. Except with the landfill, Sergeant Bluff has to decide if they're gonna stay with Gill or what they're gonna do. I'm assuming they'll stay, but it will have a major effect if they pull out on the rest of the communities and the county. So that'll probably be decided September.
I had a couple, I guess, MPO Policy Board, we did discuss, well, this is through Simcoe with Iowa DOT. We discussed a lot of the upcoming detour routes that are starting, I guess, today, which, you know, most people aren't going to like the I-29 one. Of course, a little discussion on Outer Drive being closed came up. The other thing we had was, or I had was MERD as a non-voting member, but it's the discussion on their new bylaws and, again, the purchase of Churchill Downs and what impacts that could have on them as well. Citizen concerns round 2.
I have one. I guess we got to return to this whole thing about supplemental pay. When this originally came up, the sheriff approached me, as he said, asked about supplemental pay. He said he realized it when it came up during the budget hearing when talk about the compensation board hearing. And so the sheriff came to see me, and I explained to him what we did in 2014. And at that time, the county attorney's office and the board of supervisors agreed that it was up to the elected officials could designate longevity pay. And it was clear at that time that we just asked for the support of the board to establish that longevity pay for the deputies. And the reason I did it that way was because I wanted to be fully transparent with it. And that's always been very important to me, is that we're transparent with anything that I do, that I try to bring before the board. And so, and it was passed and that resolution, it's not binding to anyone. It's not binding to the Board of Supervisors, and we talked about that in 2014 when we put that together. So when the sheriff came to me, and I encouraged him to put it on the agenda in order to be transparent. I just think that's important. The board and the elected officials should have a good working relationship, and it has always been that way, I thought. And so what transpired when we talked about that. But for that, I had talked to Mr. Butler about that, and I told him that the conversation that I had with the sheriff, and that I intended on bringing something forward too, as far as longevity pay and maybe increasing that factor for my deputies. And then so I understand that my conversations with Mr. Butler are not privileged. So we had that conversation, everything took place. And then on a Tuesday of last week, I met with my deputies. I asked them to come in, and I said, you know, I'm aware of other counties where they don't have deputies. They have, the employees fall in the category of wage plan employees that they do here in Woodbury County. They call them different things in different counties. For example, the elections manager in Polk County actually makes more money than the auditor in Polk County. And so I talked to my deputies about that, and I thought, you know, to me, I thought that they would be treated better as far as compensation goes, because historically, the auditors and the treasurer's deputies have always been at the low end of the totem pole when you get done with the compensation board. And it occurred again this year. You gave, Melissa just got a 16% raise. The building services inspector and building services director got a 12% raise. In the jail, that got that person, and I don't begrudge him. He got a 21% raise. That did set a new record, Keith, that you referred to, that 17% raise. So you gave 21% to the folks that you can do that with. And honestly, what I've always told my folks is we don't care what everybody else gets for a raise as long as they're getting raised, because that's the only way we're going to get it. But that's what I talked to my deputies about, whether I could seek, go through the Human Resources Director to see what the comparisons would be, comparables would be if they did that. And then I wouldn't be tied to the compensation board. I wouldn't have to stand up and say that I'm doing this for the deputies. And I would be left on my own, and I was ready to take that on. And so we discussed it, didn't really come to a conclusion, but we had a good discussion about that. And I just told them that, I wasn't going to bring anything forward as far as longevity because it's pretty apparent that wasn't going to happen. And so on Thursday afternoon, I get an email from Cheryl Gordo, county auditor, saying that a supervisor called him and asked him about longevity and what we do for, what they do for deputies in there. So I went in and asked Mr. Butler. I said, why would this person send that to me? And Mr. Butler told me that that he had told the board members about it. I said, why would you do that? And he said, it's to prevent you from doing something illegal. Now that's coming from one of your employees, talking about an elected official. And I asked him who did it, and he said it was Supervisor Taylor that asked him to do 20 counties, spend all that time without talking to us at all. We should have a good working relationship. And you go out on your own, and this is pretty typical of what Mr. Taylor's been doing.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Under citizen concerns, Mr. Gill has gone on for several minutes more and has invoked my name, so I'd like to respond.
Sure.
And this is not a
and
notified
please
item
let me
on the
finish.
agenda.
Please let me finish. Okay? So all I'm asking is that what we do here is you have a set of bylaws, and we've asked for, I think the sheriff has asked, and I think the county attorney has asked for an executive session, which would kind of air things out because it falls under pending legislation. And the chairperson has denied putting that on the agenda. And so in your bylaws, Section 5 on the agenda, the pertinent part is that any member of the board may direct the chairperson to place an information or discussion item on the agenda of a subsequent meeting. The chairperson shall place an action item on the agenda of a subsequent meeting when directed by a majority of the board. So all I'm doing is appealing to the board to grant an executive session which possibly could avoid a tremendous amount of legal cost that we could be facing. Mr. Supervisor Radig said at one point, the only way we're going to decide this is to get a ruling from the court. And I'm just asking that we have that's a board member asked to place it on the agenda so that we can have an executive session and that we can maybe come to some sort of agreement where we could avoid spending a tremendous amount of money on the county's behalf.
And then to clarify that,
Mr.
if
Chair.
somebody can ask for an item to be on the agenda as information, they can't ask for a closed session.
All I'm asking is that they do it for an information, and then the way the bylaws are set up is that then the majority of the board can approve a closed session. If the chairperson is continuing to refuse, which is amazing to me because, Mr. Radig, when a person came to you and asked about voting machines, and you said to me, when have I ever denied someone placing an item on the agenda?
Right. On open public session in the meeting
Right.
where
and that's what
everybody
I'm
can hear
asking.
it. Okay, so let's have it on the agenda where we discuss it all in open session then.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead.
I've shared several concerns several times about things of this nature being brought up in citizen concerns, which are on the agenda for citizens to be able to come, not necessarily for items which should be publicly notified to be discussed so that members of the public could hear this. I want to make sure that we're very, very clear on something that Auditor Gill said. I asked our budget analyst, because we are looking at what counties are doing statewide, to ask other counties, are there instances where elected officials have given supplemental pay without the Board of Supervisors' approval? I absolutely asked that question. It's our right to ask.
Certainly is.
And for him to, but I never, and I take great exception if you're implying, that I said it was in order to prevent our auditor
Oh,
from
no.
doing something
Oh, no, that was
illegal.
Mr. Butler's word.
Okay, so I want to be very clear that they were not
I
my
want to be
own,
very clear, it was Mr. Butler's word.
that they were his own.
They were.
Okay, and because, in fairness, is that what you said, Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to be very clear because the things that have been said, insinuating or talking about other people's motivations, I want to be very clear. I asked our budget analyst to pull 20 different large counties and see, has supplemental pay ever been given by an elected official without the Board of Supervisors' approval? It has not. But that's a very fair question to ask of our budget analyst. And I just want to be very clear that that's what happened, nothing otherwise. And when we ask that, my assumption isn't that Dennis go around to everybody and say, this is what's being asked. I know you took great umbrage when something was asked of your office, and I said, I would like this information, and I acknowledged that that should not have been asked to be kept from you. But on the other hand, when you come to the budget analyst and you continually ask, if that's the case, we have the right to ask our budget analyst for this kind of information. And whether that's shared with you or not, I just want no insinuation to be that I said those words that you said tonight.
And we are absolutely clear on that, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
It was the budget analyst that did that, and I took great exception to that, to prevent me. The insinuation is I was trying to do something illegal.
And just so you know, my motivation is simply to gain information.
Right.
To see
I understand
what
that.
are the other counties in the entire state of Iowa doing.
Understand that.
Are we the outlier, which we are in this case, or are we doing standard practice as the other counties are? Thank you.
Do you have a concern there, Tina?
Tina Bertrand, Woodbury County Treasurer. I just wanted to reiterate that at the last board meeting that I was at, which was June 28th, I think it was the one before the 4th of July holiday, and we were having discussion about supplemental pay. I did make a recommendation during that meeting about holding a work session to actually discuss this issue, kind of separate. You know, typically a work session is an open, information-only type of a meeting, but it would be only to address one specific issue so that we're not having a laundry list of items out there. Now, since then, I think there have been some other comments. Auditor Gill was mentioning something tonight about a closed session. I would actually defer that decision in terms of moving it from a open session to a closed session, obviously to the county attorney or somebody else who's probably better versed on the bylaws and the requirements that would be eligible to make it a closed session versus an open session. But I was talking 2 weeks ago that this is an important issue to at least have a discussion with everybody. Where it goes, and if it continues to go down a legal path, I guess it could still go that way, but I think it would be worth having a conversation as elected officials so that we can discuss it and discuss all the issues out there. That was really the only thing I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks.
Only as it relates to the closed session. It was brought up in one of the meetings, I think Mr. Taylor brought up, have there been two opposing sides at the closed session, or I don't remember which one of you brought it up, which I didn't know the answer. I didn't have no idea what the answer would be. So I brought that to Mr. Jennings' attention, and the response was that we all are not opposing sides. We're all Woodbury County. And so his response was, it's not like somebody outside the county is trying to take money from the county, and therefore you may not have a closed session with opposing sides. So I guess we may have a differing of opinion on how we get wherever it is that we're trying to get. But I just want to, I said it at the meeting in Anthony, and I'll say it here. We're not opposing sides. We may disagree on what we all think each different autonomous office has the authority or doesn't have the authority to do or whatever. But I think the idea of having a closed session so that all of these things can be discussed openly, frankly, outside of the public's, sometimes family discussions around the dinner table are best had just with the family around the dinner table and not with the neighbors, peeking through the window and seeing it. And then at the end of the closed session, when that's done, whatever is decided or agreed upon or not agreed upon, then that information I would certainly expect would be shared with the public transparently as much as, but just the nuances of it, I guess. So that's what I think the other 3 elected officials are hoping for. I can't speak for PJ, although I believe he did send an email requesting a closed session. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess it would be the 4 of us, other elected officials, would hope to be able to have that closed session to be able to just have those discussions so that we can, one way or the other, come up with a plan to move forward and or just put it behind us and then move forward, whatever the case might be. So we're not opposing sides. We're all Woodbury County. We're all for the people of Woodbury County. We may disagree on certain things, but we are not opposing sides. So,
Any other citizen concerns? Any board concerns?
Just wanted to bring up one, Mr. Chair. So as regards the topic of wind energy, I have been contacted by a couple of different people. And what I've told them was the ordinance discussion I went through, the hearings and everything else, the hard work that you all did. I think it's becoming a reality now where people are starting to see that this will be adjacent or next door. And what I've told those folks on either side is until we hear more from the public that there's any impetus to revisit the current setbacks, then I don't feel comfortable trying to take action. And I have asked our county attorney's office legal advice in terms of what can be done at this point if there is a desire on the public or on the board. Just want to say that, no need for discussion. I know it's not on the agenda, but I promise that at least raise that and wait to see where the public goes. So, that's it.
Rocky, do you have anything? No. Neither of you guys?
So where are you at with the closed session?
I have no intention of it.
My question on that is which legal advisors would be represented in that hypothetical?
Are you saying which legal counsels or?
Right. I mean, it's a, is it not a tricky one? I mean, who is admitted to a closed session? Is it up to the chair when it's called?
Typically with the litigation matter, you would have a closed session and you would have the attorney that represents your interests as the board, would you not? I don't know. That's why
I'm just playing it out in my mind. We have board advice, county attorney advice, other advice.
If you want clarification from myself, I have no intention of asking for another legal, I don't intend on having an attorney representing me. PJ is the county attorney. He has suggested that we have an executive session to talk about pending litigation, a way maybe to avoid that. The county attorney is advising the chairperson that it is indeed appropriate to have a closed session.
And I would just reiterate that as well. I don't think, I mean, I have no intention, other than getting Doug's opinion on that memo. Doug is not, or his firm will not represent anything moving forward. So, I mean, I would have no intention of having any legal counsel there or at a closed session hearing at all. It was just.
The reason I bring it up is I have somewhat of a bad taste in my mouth from county attorney's office counsel being privileged and having an open discussion at a board meeting about what it said. I'm thinking about going into a closed session and getting more of that. Do I feel like we're not all going to come back to the public and still have a debate about what was recommended legally? I feel like that would still be a risk. That's why I bring that up, because the more representation we have in that sort of environment, the more potential there is for things to be taken out of, just editorialized in an open session. I'm just being frank. I mean,
Yeah, no, and I wouldn't have an answer. You'd have to talk to PJ about that. The one thing that I do remember from the meeting when PJ talked about that he had given the memo in confidence, but that it would be up to the members of the board to decide whether they would, I can't remember how he worded it, but relinquish
redisseminate
the privileged information or not. So.
Okay.
But I think that's the benefit of the closed session, is to have those discussions and have any one of those questions answered, so that when we then walk out of that session, everybody's comfortable as to what the expectations are for each elected official. Because, I mean, remember there are, 9 elected officials in Woodbury County, and we're all autonomous to each other. Even though you all 5 sit on a board, you're autonomous from him as much as you're autonomous from me. And so at least that point moving forward, we all would be on the same page. Right, wrong, or indifferent, whether I like it or not, at least then we know what the plan is going forward. I think that's the purpose, at least that's my perspective of it. And my understanding, and from the meeting that I had with PJ when he told me that he was going to request for a closed session from the supervisor, that's his purpose, is to at least just have a plan then moving forward.
I have, just based on the previous meetings, some doubt that will all be on the same page, so to speak. But I also weigh that with my respect for a concrete process, irrespective of my thoughts. So I may be breaking with some compatriots here on the board, but I will, rather than go through the lengthy thing of putting it on the agenda as information, I'll just request of the chair that this closed session be held. And you can deny it, and that's fine. Or, I just don't want to put it on the agenda, have a big discussion, rehash it all. But that's my opinion, my personal opinion.
I concur with Matthew.
I just think anything we discuss can be done in public.
I'm gonna put my mayor hat on, so I'm not the county hat on, just so you realize that, so you guys know. Okay, there's many ways you can look at this, and you all know that. If you sit down in a closed session, you know what, here's the thing. Either you're gonna come to a decision, you're all gonna come to common ground, or you're not. At least you sit down there, you know what, nobody's gotta worry about anything else other than what you're gonna talk about. You ain't gotta worry about what the guy sitting back here is worried about, everything else. You can take care of the business at hand. And if you wanna sit there and scream at each other, well, that's a problem you're gonna have. But it shouldn't be that way. As, like we do, mayor, you know, like I told you, I'm putting my mayor hat on. If I had the same issue, that's what I'd do, is sit down in a closed session, work it out, and if you come to the end, you can't decide what you're gonna do, you can agree to disagree, but at least you sat down to be adults, discuss it, and try to work the issue out. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, I'm just throwing my opinions. Thank you.
I feel we're at an impasse, and anything that needs to be discussed, we can discuss it in an open session and have the public hear it, so. Any other board concerns? All right, seeing none, we're adjourned. Oh, and if